Good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome you to the July 2nd Washington 500 Continuum Care Monthly Meeting. Happy to have you all here. Happy July 4th week. You know, the holiday we celebrate the Declaration of Independence for some that created a promise of independence for all that we are still fighting for today by being here at this meeting. And so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Catherine, if you could call the roll, please.
I will. Patricia Sam.
Present.
Tamara Bellman.
Here.
Jaja Floyd.
Here.
Bella Irons.
Here.
Amaya Lenore.
Here.
Elizabeth Maupin.
Here.
Dorsal Plants.
Here.
Ruby Romero. Here. And Martha Sasarosi did inform us that she is out.
Yep, she's excused, yeah.
Yes. Kristina Sawyckyj.
She's there.
Yeah.
You had like, well, she was on the thing.
She's on, yeah. she's
Sure,
on.
but I gotta get her.
Here.
Oh, thank you, Kristina.
Here.
Victor Liu
Here.
and Amy Thomas.
Here. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 11 members present. You've met quorum.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you everyone for being here. So we'll go ahead and we'll jump right into it. First, there would now would be a motion would be in order to adopt the June, I almost said May, the June minutes, if anyone is interested in making such a motion.
A motion that we adopt the June amendments. This is Jaja Floyd. I second that.
All right, a motion by Jaja with a second by Ruby. If it's okay, we'll do just a quick voice vote to keep the meeting moving. If you could at this time come off of mute and say yes or aye if you are voting to adopt the minutes. Aye.
Yes.
If you could come off of mute and say nay or no if you are voting against the adoption of the minutes. All right, and lastly, if you're wishing to abstain from voting on the motion, if you come off mute and say you are abstaining. I believe the yeses have it. One last piece of, Ruby.
Did we want to do the theory of change and land acknowledgements?
Thank you. I knew I was forgetting something. I believe we have Elizabeth who's volunteered to read the land acknowledgement for us to ground us in the meeting.
The King County Continuum of Care Board acknowledges that we work on the unceded land, traditional lands of the Coast Salish peoples, especially the first peoples of Seattle, the Duwamish people, the original stewards of the land past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. This acknowledgement only becomes meaningful when combined with accountable relationships and informed action, and is the first step in honoring the land that we today sit on and their people. Theory of change.
Okay. And then I'm going to read the theory of change. This is Ruby Romero. If we create a homelessness response system that centers people with lived experience of homelessness, then we will be able to respond to needs and eliminate inequalities in order to end homelessness for all.
Thank you both, and thank you for reminding me, Ruby. I would not be able to do this without you in any way, shape, or form. We have one piece of bureaucracy left before we get into our reports. On the public-facing agenda, it states that the letter that we are drafting to the U.S. Congress is informational, but our hope is that someone may be willing to make a motion to amend the agenda so that we could potentially vote to approve the letter and send it out if if we reach a point where the draft is ready to be sent out by that time of the meeting. But if anyone is willing to make that motion, now would be a time it would be available.
This is Zsa Floyd. I motion that we adopt that letter. Definitely adopt that letter.
I second Amy Thomas.
Do we have to do an amendment?
Yeah, we have to do an amendment to the agenda first.
Can we do an
Yeah.
amendment to the agenda first? I'm sorry, y'all. Can we do an amendment to the agenda about the letter?
Yeah, from informational to a vote.
Oh, from informational to a vote. That's where I want the letter, so I'm like jumping ahead of schedule. Okay, can we make an amendment to the agenda to move it from informational to a vote? This is Zsa Floyd.
Thank you, Zsa. Is there a second, Amy?
Yeah.
I heard one in the room here, Elizabeth.
Yeah, it was.
I will second that.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And Zsa, thank you for the enthusiasm and for the motion. If we are okay with keeping the enthusiasm going, we'll do a voice vote for this one as well. If you are voting to adopt the motion to amend the agenda, if you could come off of mute and say yes or yay. Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
If you are voting against the motion to amend the agenda, if you could come off of mute and say no or nay. All right. And if you're wishing to abstain from the vote, if you would like to come off mute and say that you are abstaining. All right. I believe the yeses have it again. All right. So we will hopefully leave. Well, no, we won't because we may have a vote. So we'll see Robert here later this afternoon. But we'll leave him be for the moment and we'll move into our reports. I believe first up is the convening report of what was an amazing and wonderful convening. If Vic wants to take it away.
Great, thank you, Dawson. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victor Liu. For this context, I use he, him, his pronouns, a CoC board member as well. So for the convening focused on the pathway to housing security presentation and emphasize community engagement throughout the day on June 17, 2025, with 75 attendees in person at North Seattle College as well as virtual participants. And then the agenda then included 2 breakout sessions to gather input and foster dialogue among both in-person and virtual attendees. And then a debrief session was concluded at the end to reflect on key takeaways and themes. Additionally, there was also the charter revision work group updates during the convening. And then I neglected to mention that we also have a point in time count presentation from Janelle during the convening as well. That's it. Thank you.
Of order. We missed public comment as well. Your favorite part, Dorsal?
Thank you for the update, Victor. We'll go ahead and Elizabeth, I see your hand.
Yes, I have a question about the convening. Was there a count of the people who were there virtually?
I cannot remember on top of my head, but I believe it is, I could be wrong, I'll get back to you, but total is 75, but I believe it was 48 virtual attendees.
Thank you.
I see some head nod, yeah, so good.
Thank you, Victor. And thank you to the convening work group. It was an amazing event. That's why I was so excited to move to that update. But we're going to take a step back. And again, Ruby, thank you. We'll open up the floor for public comment. First, Catherine, did we receive any public comment in writing?
No, we did not.
Thank you, Catherine. If you're here either in person or online and would like to give public comment, I see at least one hand from, I believe, Cindy.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just got on. So public comment starting right now?
Yeah, you are just on time.
I'm in. Oh, okay. Good. Well, my name is Cindy Charlie Boyce, and I'm a advocate for tenants. And I would like to make some suggestions to the Volume 8 Policy Manual for CEA. One is it says the ombudsman can assist you if given permission. And we experienced that, and it wasn't anything. And so I think with a mobility request. So it was very disappointing. It wasn't what is supposed to happen. So since I think they don't have the time or don't understand the commitment, that you shouldn't offer that. That it didn't, it was a one and done. That was it, one and done, you know, and it was not an appropriate referral. And since then I've been reading the manual, and it sounds like a navigator can help us, but we don't know who to approach. So I would suggest that you get a list of navigators that are willing to look at all the rules and realize they can help them. Because are you housed? Aren't you out? Are you not housed? Oh, I've heard, oh, you got to go get back in line again. Well, you don't. It says if you're homeless at 180 days, you can come right back in. But tenants don't even know that when they're tricked back onto the streets by their housing providers. So I really think when they should get 180 days from when their provider codes them as not living in the program anymore. And somehow we need to get a letter to those people so they know they have 180 days, and where they can go, where there are navigators that understand this quick back-end system and can assist them. That's what I'm hoping can be done, because this is very confusing. You know, that when a housing provider just wants to put the homeless back out on the streets, it's allowed, and it is allowed, and that these tenants don't have any recourse to be rehoused. They don't think so, but I've been reading the manual and there's some options. So I wish we would just firm up that pathway and show it and take some responsibility and get the letters out when their housing provider puts them back on the streets. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Feel free to raise your hand. We should acknowledge in this time that we are talking about freedom and independence, there are a high number of evictions currently going on here in King County that are impacting not just people that we serve, but also people that we know personally. All right. All right. We will move forward from public comment, but as always, feel free to leave something in the Q&A or reach out to us directly at any point in the meeting. We appreciate your appreciation. And for hopefully one last time this meeting, I will thank you, Ruby, for keeping me on track. We will go back to the committee reports now, which hopefully is the correct order of things. And I believe we will be hearing next from the lovely Zsa on the Coordinated Entry Committee.
Well, thank you so much, Doris. Well, I appreciate that. My name is Zsa Floyd, and I am on the Coordinated Entry Committee. And here's our updates. We had discussion and decisions. Tom proposed forming a focus group to explore alternatives, focusing on privacy, equity, and evaluation tools. Volunteer focus group, Finn. The volunteers for the focus group were our committee members, Finn, Noah, Portia, Eddie, Sherry, and Martha. The Coordinated Entry, or the CE Committee, approved the group, which will support development of PSH, which is Permanent Supportive Housing, focused pilot, updates to be shared at the CEC July meeting. We also had another discussion and decision made. The motion to approve time-limited use of emergent needs case conferencing space. I motioned Zsa Floyd to approve the time-limited use of the emergent needs case conferencing space It was seconded by Sherry Tillman, and the vote approved via voice vote. The co-chair vote, the nominations were myself, Zsa Floyd, by Martha Linder, seconded by Eddie Matlock Mahone, and the vote approved 11 members. Thank you so much for your confidence in me and nominating me as your co-chair of the committee, Coordinated Entry Committee. All right, so you're not the only one, Dorsal. And that is the end of my report. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. And that confidence is clearly well placed because that was an amazing report.
Thank you.
Victor, did you still want to have your, oh, no. All right. If there's any other questions for Zsa. Okay. We'll move on to, I think, our last committee report, and that's the co-chair report from Ruby.
Thank you, Dorsal. Appreciate it. And congratulations, Zsa. And we've got the co-chair agenda planning meeting that we have every Monday that board members are welcome to come to up to an amount, half of the board -1. Right? Yes.
Just count.
So we addressed concerns about the Microsoft Office access. And we were like, confirming if administrating settings for CoC board member accounts were the same. And it looks like they are. So if you're having any other issues with accessing your account, please just reach out to the co-chairs or Catherine. And then we also did have a presentation scheduled for the governing board this last month, but it is going to be in July. So it'll be in this month. So keep your eyes peeled on that. And then we also learned about the letter that we're going to be discussing later today and how we could address the potential funding cuts at HUD and the portion of, stating our values and what we would like to see from the budgeting portion or from the budgeting process. We also we had a brief meeting with Kelly, and we just discussed our how to put input onto the agency work plan and opportunities to collaborate on that as a board. And then we also had a fun conversation yesterday or 2 days ago about OPMA and collaborating on documents and how the board can do that, making sure we're following OPMA in full. So that's pretty much what we were working on. The next few meetings are going to be July 7th, July 14th, July 21st, and July 28th. And again, board members are welcome to come. So that's my report on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruby. And just a friendly reminder, while board members are absolutely welcome to come, we do have to be below quorum for that meeting. And so if you arrive and it's an issue of quorum, just a friendly reminder to potentially swap out or be willing to, if you've been at several of the meetings, to step back so someone who hasn't could attend and vice versa. Any questions for Ruby before we move forward? All right. Well, thank you, Ruby. And thank you, everyone, for the reports. The rest of the reports will be sent out. If not already out with the agenda packet, we'll get them sent out with the minutes and the things after the meeting, because all of the committees and work groups are doing great and wonderful things right now. So we will move on, and wow, we are well ahead of schedule, which is potentially never a problem. But if Kelsey is here and ready.
Yep, I am.
All right, we'll move forward with the NOFO update and the debriefing strategies from our expert on the NOFO, Kelsey.
Thank you. I'm just going to pull up slides. Good afternoon, everybody. Kelsey Beckmeyer, she, her pronouns. I'm the CoC manager with KCRHA. Oh, my slides are off. So I want to go over some updates of what we know regarding the NOFO and preparation for both this coming cycle for 2025, as well as updates and preparation for fiscal year 26. A caveat that there is a lot up in the air right now, particularly as it pertains to just what the federal budget will be. So we are moving with what is known, what was published in the 2024 NOFO, and making pivots as best we can as we get more information. So just as a brief overview, the CoC Notice of Funding Opportunity, or the NOFO, is now a biannual competition for CoC awards to renew funding as well as apply for new funding. A collaborative application for fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25 was submitted in 2024. We do not anticipate having to submit a new collaborative application this current year. What we do anticipate having to submit is project applications for those projects that expire in calendar year 26. Those would be submitted during the fiscal year 25 time period. Again, there's some uncertainty if there will be any changes from the published NOFO from 2024, but we're kind of preparing for multiple scenarios in order to rapidly respond. The currently known due date for the project renewals, or the priority list, is August 29th, 2025. So we are working with that deadline in mind. Kind of current steps that we're taking with the NOFO, we are actively completing the fiscal year 25 grant inventory worksheet. This is a list of all grants that are set to expire in calendar year 26. HUD sends this out to the collaborative applicant and all direct recipients of grants to ensure that the budget line items, totals, and unit information related to rental assistance is accurate, especially if there were any amendments throughout the year for those grants. So those have been sent out to all direct recipients, including KCRHA, to review. Have requested that all non-KCRHA recipients send that information back to KCRHA by July 11th, as this is due to HUD on July 29th. We are also convening the NOFO work group. There's a kickoff meeting tomorrow with that work group to kind of prepare strategy for the priority list based on knowns and some just kind of lingering questions around what may be required by HUD this year. Our procurement team is also working to update and prepare materials if there are new funds available, as we would need to do a local competition and RFP process. So the materials from 24 are being reviewed and just updated. Given that all of those materials were part of the collaborative application review, we are not doing too many updates, but really wanting to be able to have things ready with 2025 numbers and information so that we can get that published and going as soon as possible. It is unknown at this time if there will be new funds available. Before I get there, are there any questions on just kind of current NOFO and steps and actions?
Currently, I don't see any in the room.
Great. I will continue forward. So for the fiscal year 24 collaborative application, we did receive a high-level debrief of the collaborative application score. So this is how we kind of performed. This looks at both the narrative responses and our system performance data. So overall, our collaborative application score increased 18.5 points from fiscal year 23 and was above the national median score. In review, some noted areas of improvement are, we have kind of categorized them in two places based on system performance. So this is based on individual project and collective project performance and data based on system performance measures from HUD. So we have some noted areas of improvement related to system performance that include the length of time people experience homelessness. We have seen this increasing over time. HUD's measure is to not see this increase, I believe, more than 5%, or they want to see really a decrease over time. We know that in our area, the number of housing units available, affordability of housing, income are all kind of factors that are impacting the length of time that people experience homelessness. So this is something to be looking at on a broad system level. The other measure that we saw lower performance is regarding return rates to homelessness. The one in particular is around they look at both a 6-month time period, a 12-month time period, and a 24-month time period. And we have seen an increase in rates of returns to homelessness in those time periods, with the highest percentage being a 15% return rate of those who have exited to permanent housing and returned over a 2-year time period. So wanting to work with, what are some preventative measures and some diversion measures to help folks maintain housing once they exit out of kind of the homelessness system. The other noted area to increase overall system performance is looking at how programs are supporting folks to increase earned income. So this is income based on employment, and particularly this is looked at folks who are exiting projects, wanting to exit with earned income. So this is another noted area of improvement, and hope that some of the work that particularly Catherine has been leading with the Workforce Development Board can help kind of embed stronger connections to work and earned income for folks who are enrolled in services. Areas of improvement related to the overall NOFO process. So this is just how we conduct the local competition, really focused on new projects that are leveraging healthcare. There are bonus points that are awarded to COCs who put forth new projects for bonus funds that leverage either housing and or healthcare. And in the last year, we did not have any new projects that were leveraging healthcare. And that saw us miss out on a number of bonus points. So wanting to be a little more thoughtful and strategic around new projects that we put forth for bonus funds, to ensure that we are looking for projects that are leveraging other housing resources as well as healthcare resources. The other area of improvement for us to think about in the coming cycles will be around reallocation and how we approach reallocation. This is particularly regarding projects that are underperforming or underspending. So being thoughtful around ensuring that we are putting forth really strong projects. So wanting to think about our reallocation strategy, particularly for the process in FY26. Wanting to be a little cautious in how we proceed with any reallocations in 2025, just given a lot of the unknowns. So wanting to just be a little more thoughtful on what that looks like this coming year. The NOFO work group, which again will be kind of kicking off very soon, tomorrow, will really be focusing on the FY25 strategy for when the NOFO opens. And the strategy really is going to be focused on the priority list. There is uncertainty about whether or not projects will all need to be rated and ranked anew. So there's just not a lot of clear guidance on what to anticipate when the NOFO opens. So we want to be able to be prepared and have kind of multiple ideas of how we want to approach this. The kind of biggest focus of the work group will really be on fiscal year 26 preparation. There is an aim to review the rating criteria for both renewing and new projects. This has been something on the agenda for a couple of years, and just time has not allowed that. The moving to a biannual competition, however, has kind of offered up some more ample time to really focus on rating criteria, and kind of going through that with a more of a fine-tooth comb. So that will be a focus of the NOFO work group in the coming year. The other focus will be on the local competition strategy, really for new projects and reallocation as it relates to improvement of the NOFO process. On those new projects and reallocation, to ensure that we're not leaving any points on the table when it comes to our collaborative application. And those are the updates I have for you. I am gonna stop sharing my screen so I can see folks, if there are any questions that people may have. Ruby, I saw your hand.
Yeah, and I see Dorsal's hand too, but I just wanted to quickly, since I'm not, or since I don't believe I'm gonna be on that NOFO work group this year, I got plenty of other work groups I'm on. I was just wanted to question if like healthcare, you were saying leveraging healthcare was part of this thing, and so if Medicaid or the Foundational Community Supports Program would count as that. I just wanted to throw that out there potentially, because I know that the FCS program or Foundational Community Supports Program does have state secured funding for at least 4 years. And so just wanted to throw that out there if there's some cuts. Thank you.
Yep, that's great, Ruby. So what we are also needing to emphasize is that for organizations who are applying for new projects, it's those projects that need to be demonstrating leverage with healthcare, and that is definitely one that we can be promoting and putting in as an example.
Awesome, thank you.
Dorsal.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. I have 2 questions, and I want to acknowledge that they might be questions that are more for the data team. It's just the presentation triggered them. The first one's on the increased income statistic. I was just curious, what type of proof do we require of providers, and has that, if we do require documentation around employment, have we done considerations around status in regards to documenting income and communicating that information up to HUD? And I'll pause there because my second question's a separate topic, if I'm making sense.
Yep. So generally when we are doing reviews, so this data point is looking at those who are exiting programs. So there is an annual review that is done in HMIS, and a lot of this is based on self-report. So there may be pieces where improved training for providers on data collection and how to capture those things is important. But from my previous experience and just like current understanding, there is not any documentation required when we are noting that information in HMIS, which is where the data is collected.
Thank you. And the next question. So I'm guessing, so when you mentioned in your report that our return to homelessness numbers look better than previous years. I was wondering, is it similar kind of to our process in that when they're looking at that, they're only making comparisons across our historical data, or is there at any point where somebody looks at the entire HMIS system across the nation to determine how many people may have left regions and returned to homelessness in those regions, if that question makes sense?
Yep. So for the system performance measures, yes, we are compared to ourselves. So really we're in competition with ourselves. When it comes to looking nationally, that is more so on a HUD level, but that's not part of the competition. There are a couple of places where HUD can look at that with performance measures. There is a public facing tableau that holds a dashboard that looks at all COCs. And this is something that we have been reviewing and looking at as well. But having kind of good quality around like how you're performing is improvement is easier to look at when you are looking at the kind of year-to-year comparison or over time comparison, whereas looking at a comparison with other COCs would make sense, looking at kind of COCs that have similar demographics, similar population types, size. You know, we don't want to be comparing ourselves to a COC that has 100,000 people. And I know Ben is also putting in the chat some information on Pitts and Hicks kind of across the nation as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Kelsey or comments? I mean, congratulations. 18-point increase is not insignificant. At least from what I know, it doesn't seem insignificant.
Yeah, we're very happy with that. We had a really concerted effort to ensure our narrative responses were really strong last year. And just a huge shout out to Jeff, who joined with drafting a number of those. He and I kind of took the lead on that. So very grateful that we were able to see such a significant increase.
Great. Any other questions, or we are really ahead of schedule? Ruby.
Your time. Since we have some extra time on the agenda there, I'll ask a secondary question just to clarify. When you said the increase, what was did you say that the returns to homelessness that wasn't the point increase, was it?
No, so
No.
what is looked at is both our narrative responses, so how we discuss how our continuum is performing. And that's where we really saw the most significant increase, is really in how our narrative responses. When it comes to our system performance data, those scores stayed fairly steady. I'm working on putting together some just more in-depth score comparison overviews for my own kind of strategizing on things. But really the increase came with the quality of our narrative responses.
Well, thank you for that clarification, and I'm glad to hear it though. That's great.
All right. Do we want to just go on a longer break than normal, or do we want to just take a 5-minute break and then come back and just keep going to end the meeting early? I'm seeing nods of yes. It is summer.
I vote a regular break and let's get back to it.
I'll second that.
All right. Well, we're going to leave Robert on the bench for right now. We're just going to say we're going to, and I have 2:30. Let's just go ahead and say it's 2:39. And so let's be back here at 2:45. 1 minute extra. We'll do 6 minutes instead of 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So we're gonna have everyone that's present come back on camera, if they would be so kind. It's 2:45 and we'll get started with the second half of our meeting. Seeing some faces pop on the screen. I hope you enjoyed your extra minute break. Don't get used to that kind of, no, I'm just kidding. So we're gonna move into the next portion of our agenda, which is gonna be the informational system performance measure number 3 presentation by our data management specialist from KCRHA, Ben Mathewson. And so I'm gonna hand it over to Ben, who I see and looks like he is ready to go. Hi, Ben.
Hey, Ruby. Yes, we are ready to go. Let me share my screen. Are you able to? I just sent a request for sharing. Didn't realize that wasn't enabled.
Ben, I believe Kelsey has all of the presentations.
And you should be ready now to share, Ben.
Thank you. That's perfect. Is everyone able to see that screen?
No.
Yes.
Did I hear a no?
No, you
No.
heard it now.
Ah, that's perfect. All right. Hello, I'm Ben Mathewson. I will be presenting on behalf of Daniel Ramos, who is our data asset manager at KCRHA. And today is sort of a continuation of an initiative that Daniel's been running to try to improve our collective understanding of things by developing shared vocabulary around data. So as stated, we'll be covering the system performance measures and in particular measure 3. It's a great thing to come on the heels of the NOFO topic because a lot of that scoring process relies on these system performance measures. So our first goal, as we just talked about, is to try to improve our collective understanding by developing this shared vocabulary. And we hope to use that vocabulary to have purposeful dialogues or to facilitate informed discussion, and then to develop that dialogue into shared mental models that we can use to guide community action. We have a number of federal reporting requirements that we support and facilitate. From the longitudinal systems analysis, or LSA, it's usually early in January, to the entire process and then final reporting for the point in time count, which is sort of the flagship event. And that goes hand in hand with the housing inventory count. And those are essentially the two sides, essentially supply and demand across the homelessness response system. Today's topic will be system performance measures, but those do rely on the data that's collected and processed for PIT and HIC, and they relate closely to LSA. In addition to that, there are annual performance reports that are sort of staggered across these so that we don't overwhelm any particular moment in time with them. And then the Emergency Solutions Grant quarterly reporting that's due. I'm going to pause kind of frequently going through. I'd like to keep, we can do responses throughout this if you have pressing questions, or we can just save them to the end. But I ask that if we do ask questions during this, we just kind of keep it brief. Thank you. So the system performance measures are essentially a way of measuring efficacy across the homelessness response system. There are 7 major divisions. We pointed out some of the top ones here that we're concerned with, which is length of time homelessness, exits to permanent housing or retaining permanent housing, which are successful exits. Today's topic will be that number experiencing homelessness, which will compare PIT counts with enrollments counts from our HMIS system. And then, of course, returns to homelessness, and then that other troublesome data point, the income growth and employment gains. We like to think of this as a measure of the change in the number of homeless individuals. This measure in particular does not count households. So I want to point that out. There is a corrected version of this slide presentation that'll be made available, but I'll point out a couple of things that are worth noting as we go through. Again, this measure measures strictly for individuals. It is a way of assessing the CoC's progress toward eliminating or reducing homelessness. And it does utilize 2 data sources. One would be that PIT count, and the other are the annual counts that are derived directly from the HMIS, which is essentially the system of record keeping for enrollments and services. It's divided.
Really quick, I
Yes.
see a hand, I'm sorry, I see a hand. Dorsal, did you want to ask a question?
I was just curious if you could, if unless you're going to later, can you say why it doesn't track families? Because with it being listed on the slide, I'm just curious.
Yeah, so in general, we sort of anecdotally say families. What we mean to say here is households, right? Because HUD has a defined unit of measure that is the household. And we all understand that what we have are households functionally are not always families relationally. So I'm kind of steering attention away from this one because the SPM just looks at individuals, and that's the SPM as a whole. Now, the LSA is similar to the SPM in most respects and measures for households. So there's sort of two different sorts of reporting requirements, one that deals primarily with individuals and one that deals with households. It just happens that SPM is the one that deals with individuals. All right, the math behind this is pretty simple if we don't count the difficulty of sampling and extrapolating during the bit count, but we are essentially just using the data that are reported up to HUD, and then we're using that to populate the system performance measures or to calculate the system performance measures. So for this one, we look at the difference between sheltered and unsheltered counts that we determine over the course of the pit count, and we break that down into the three basic shelter types that HUD uses to sort of measure sheltered homelessness, and that's transitional housing, emergency shelters, and safe haven programs. We all understand there's a lot more program types than that, and the boundaries are occasionally fuzzy, but those are the ones that are prescribed down to us by HUD. 3.2, which is the second part of measure 3, that is the one where we essentially look at data that are recorded in the HMIS and calculate that annually. It's a little more reliable because we don't have to go out and sample for it. It is also a little, you have to take all of this with a grain of salt because, as Dorsal, you pointed out earlier, a lot of this is self-reporting and a lot of this has to do with how robust our system is in terms of data entry and staying up to date. All right, so here we get into the actual numbers. Now, I'm going to show this slide because this is the one that was shared out. I did correct this based on the most current reported PIT numbers, and that is this slide right here. So these changes will be coming at you after this board meeting convenes, but these are the correct numbers as reported up to HUD. You'll notice that we're not showing the differences between the pit count here and the pit count here, despite the fact that we have numbers. And the reason for that is that in 2023, it's an off year. So we do the record pull from the enrollment system, the HMIS. And so we are able to do a good evaluation of the level of sheltered homelessness across the system. What we don't do on the off year is an unsheltered count. We do those on even years. So 2022 and then 2024, and then in upcoming 2026, we'll have those directly sampled extrapolations of unsheltered homelessness in addition to sheltered homelessness. So we're not looking at the difference between these 2 years. We could look at the difference between any year that included an unsheltered count, but we don't want to do an apples to oranges comparison here. So that's what that asterisk is all about. The reason these numbers are carried forward into 2023 is this is actually just 2022's number. As it stands, it's our best, very loose estimator of what we expected to see in 2023. So these other numbers, these are ones that we were able to observe because in 2023 we do a record pull and we do the count directly looking at enrollments data, so we always have access to the sheltered count. Does this make sense? Okay. So this is the second part, measure 3.2. The part we just looked at was that Pitt and Hick data source. That's where we do the sheltered and unsheltered counts on the even or odd years. This is the annual count that's done every year based on enrollments data, and that's why we don't see any reference to unsheltered count here. I'm pausing here for a moment to just let folks soak that in. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, we do have a question in the room.
So,
John.
oh, my name is Jaja Floyd, and my question is, so this is the annual count, right? So you have a total of 14,619 unduplicated, but it is, and that does not include the homelessness count, unsheltered, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And so when I look at the 16,868, does that include that count right there too? For
So
2024? I'm lost.
yeah, okay. So this is where this distinction gets a little weird. So in the first slide, we're looking at the pit counts. And here what we're doing is we do a sample survey and we extrapolate or estimate for the estimated number of unsheltered people based on what we observe in the sheltered system. So what we can observe is essentially our hardest form of data, most reliable because people are enrolled, that enrollment is recorded, they're delivered a service and so on, and all of that's recorded. So these are estimations, what comes out of PIT.
Okay.
Now, the housing
Yeah.
inventory count is not an estimation. That's a tally of what available inventory is recorded in that same HMIS and that we're able to collect from programs that may not record their data directly in the HMIS, the non-participating programs, but we actively solicit their program information so that we're able to include as close to a total tally of housing available across the system as we can get. So HIC is just a tally of housing as recorded in the system. PIT is estimations based in part on sampling that we do in January and based in part on what we observe in the enrollments history in the HMIS.
Okay.
Yeah, and this data right here is it's called an unduplicated count of enrollments. So again, this is a count of what's happening in the system.
Real
Recording
time?
services. Sort of. It's point in
In
time
real
still.
time? Oh, this is Jaja. Are you saying this is what's happening, this count in real time?
I wouldn't say in real time because that implies we're sort of monitoring it moment to moment, but we are taking this from data that represents the years in question. So this is the annual number of enrollees for 2024, number of enrollees for 2023.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you, Ben.
Yeah, and I apologize. Some of this murkiness is more or less inherited as part of the reporting requirement, but we try to make it clear.
Ben, I think Elizabeth, did you have a question?
I'm trying to sort this through so that my understanding is that the point in time count is the count on a particular day. And your HMIS data would include people who have been homeless in that time period, but not necessarily on a particular day.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
So this is a survey of activity across the year. And this is a point estimate, yes, for a given day in early year, or usually the last couple of weeks of January.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great clarifying question. Anything else on this slide before we move into just open questions? Yeah, that's it. Any other questions that anyone has? Anything outstanding?
I just want to say thank you for this presentation. It was really in-depth, and I learned a lot from it. So that's very good for me personally. But I just wanted to get some clarification on basically, when you're looking at the point in time count, like we were just looking at that last slide again. So it says that, I know that you kind of just went over this, but how is it that we're projecting that? I'm sorry, if maybe that's something we could talk about off of the meeting, but what's the projection or how do you do that projection?
Yeah, so I'm going to use the term extrapolation or estimation. And I'm going to pause for 1 second. I'm going to put your question in my RAM, and then Dorsal, hit me with yours just in case there's a parallel stream here.
The question I was going to have involved emergency vouchers. So
Gotcha.
probably
We'll do one then the other. Okay. So Ruby, so these extrapolations are interesting. So obviously there's a difficult problem that you can't see everyone who's experiencing homelessness on a given night. We have to just measure where we're able and then make those extrapolations. So part of this is based on what we observe in the sheltered system, or in other words, where people have actually entered hard data that says you received a service, or you were enrolled, or you were in a night by night, or you went to permanent supportive housing, whatever that is. We use that distribution under the assumption that that population of people is somewhat similar to the other population of people. So it becomes part of the basis for extrapolating out, or essentially using that limited sample data that we collect through surveys, and then coupling that with the sheltered data and seeing how we can fill in the blanks to get to a truer or a better representation of the total number of people who are actually experiencing unsheltered homelessness. Without getting too much into like the statistical methodology, which might put the room to sleep. Does that help?
Yeah, maybe just to clarify, you're basically saying that we take numbers from the the even years and then kind of meet in the middle or figure out, whatever that methodology is with those two numbers to make a number for the unsheltered population in a sheltered count year. Is that correct? Does that make sense?
Okay, I hear you. So it sounds like you're asking, how do we fill in the blanks for the years where we don't do any sampling for unsheltered people?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, that's extremely basic right now. What
Okay.
HUD typically does is just carry forward the unsheltered number from the prior year. If we wanted to be a little more mathematical about this, it doesn't guarantee that we're any more certain about it, but you think of it as, look at the difference between 2022 and 2024. We don't know 2023, but we're going to take this difference, cut it in half, add it to this. Here we are. What they do is even simpler. They say this is what we saw in 2022. So basically, that's what we're going to say we're getting at least in 2023.
Okay.
It's one of those things in statistics where you have to think this is accurate, but it's not very precise.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a
There
great,
you go.
yeah, I like
that's
that.
good.
Accurate but not very
Right,
precise.
right.
Thank you.
Dorsal, your question was about the vouchers?
yes. And thank you for the presentation. So for the program enrollment slide, I think it was the second to last. I was wondering if KCRHA has kind of those numbers for the various the housing voucher programs in King County, and if we could kind of see kind of similar to this data, in 2023, X number of people were enrolled in emergency voucher programs. In 2024, Y are enrolled in kind of a lot, because it's interesting to me, and maybe there's a reason I don't understand, but transitional housing being on here, but not having vouchers on here seems interesting, especially since we're moving away from transitional housing as a service model and more people talk about vouchers and replacing transitional housing, if any of that made sense.
It does. So what we're dealing with right here is sort of a forced scope. We get to report on what we have to report on because an SPM is prescribed. So we're not reporting on emergency vouchers as a part of this SPM because that's not what's currently prescribed by HUD. If the question is, are we able to get numbers of utilization or capacity for a particular subtype of program, such as programs that are funded through emergency vouchers or EHV, then the answer to that is yes, and I would point you in the direction of like making a data request to KCRHA. Kelsey, I see your hand up as well, and then let me just check in. Dorsal, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Kelsey.
Another important part of this is that any vouchers, whether that's a Section 8 voucher, an emergency housing voucher, a housing choice voucher, are not tracked in HMIS, as those are the responsibility of public housing authorities. So those are in a separate database. It's public housing authority information because it's technically not part of the homelessness system. Those are kind of two separate places where data would be tracked. So it's not incorporated per HUD to be in the HMIS system. The reason that transitional housing is that is seen as a literal homelessness status program. So that's why it is included in the count, and it is under programs that are funded with public dollars for transitional housing is tracked in HMIS. So there's some information we just don't have access to. It would be the public housing authorities.
Thank you.
The
We have another question in the room, sorry.
A very simple question. What does SPM stand for?
System performance measure.
Measure. Oh, measure is the last one. Okay, that's what I didn't get. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ben?
I think JJ. Is there a JJ in the room?
No.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ben? No, not seeing any, seeing head nods, no. So we'll move on to the next. Thank you so much, Ben. We really appreciate it. Like I said, it was a really informational presentation.
And we could hear you.
Yes, and I learned about Tableau, that Tableau thing that you're talking about. Holy moly, that's a whole nother level unlock for me to explore. So thanks for that. Got something to do tonight for sure. The next thing we're going to be moving into is, I believe, a presentation on the 5-year plan and an update on that with Kiki Serantes. I believe this is the first time that the board's meeting Kiki, am I correct? So we're excited to meet you. Hi, Kiki, how's it going?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Kiki Serantes. I use she and they pronouns. I'm the planning manager at KCRHA. I've been here, it will be 6 months in just about a week. So I've met some of you, but I've listened into a few of these, and I'm just grateful to be in this space with you. One of the projects that I have been working on since starting has been bringing our 5-year plan into compliance with the state guidelines that came out last year. And so I'm hoping to use this as an opportunity to update you on the requirements that plan set forth and our progress so far, and give you kind of a preview of where we're at and what to expect coming up, and then open it up for any early kind of feedback or discussion. So I'm also going to share my screen, so give me a second. All right, so how I have today kind of mapped out for us. Well, one quick housekeeping is that I'm not able to see faces very easily in this kind of presentation mode. So I just ask that folks feel free to kind of interrupt me. I'll try and pause throughout, but we'll have questions at the end. But if you have anything like that needs clarifying, please just feel free to interrupt me. We'll do some framing on where we're at, how we got to this point. We'll talk a little bit about some of the addendum data that is available so far, previewing that will be included in the addendum. We'll talk about the state objectives and where we're at mapping our strategies and the timelines to those objectives and the next steps. So this is the timeline of how we kind of got to where we are. KCRHA did a super robust process starting in 2022 to develop the 5-year plan that was published in 2023, including more than 38 workshops that engaged over 400, I should say, people across the region, as well as a survey that got over 2,500 responses. That went into developing the more than 80 strategies identified in that 5-year plan that was published in 2023. It is, that original plan is on our website. I'll be sure to send that to folks, probably Catherine, so you can include it in the meeting minutes if you haven't had a chance to read it. In October, the State Department of Commerce released its new plan, updating the requirements for all local housing plans. They provided some consultant support, so we took that opportunity to do a crosswalk of our plan with these new guidelines, with these new requirements, and it did determine that we would need to file an addendum. So over the spring into now, the planning team, so me, Monica, and some of our external affairs co-workers have been working on collecting that necessary information and starting to draft some things out. Right now, we're at a point where we're seeking to just update folks as well as get some feedback and some engagement to kind of guide that addendum process, leading into a public hearing and comment period that is also required by the state guidelines. We do anticipate the date of the addendum to be adopted by December per those state requirements. So what the crosswalk saw for us to need to do with our addendum is these things. So the addendum seeks to, will extend the planning period. So the original planning period covers through 2028, but it's required for all local housing plans to cover the same 5 years as the state plan, which is 2025 to 2030. So we will be extending our plan to meet those requirements, aligning and mapping the strategies that we had identified with the 5 objectives through the through that state plan, which I'll talk about a little bit later in this presentation, as well as some additional data from the region level, including estimates of service level. So the addendum will include a summary of current investments to address homeless and housing instability by project type and by funding source, as well as a survey of fund sources for homeless housing assistance programs and capital projects. So the plan, this addendum will include a list of all fund sources, actual or potential, available to the local government, to us here in the region. And estimates of permanent and emergency housing, which we will be able to share some of that data with you in this presentation. And I think, no surprise, we're going to need a lot of those things in the next 5 to 20 years, as well as outlining the prioritization criteria used in the county for homeless and housing capital projects. And so we've been working really closely with our cities and county partners to identify and call out that criteria. We also are going to do 2 additional things in our addendum, given that the plan was published in 2023 and some progress has made and some things might have shifted a little bit on some of those items. So we'll also include a status update table, kind of just calling out the progress that has been made and just being transparent about any shifts or progress, as well as just a section calling out the realities, the opportunities, and the challenges of the times we're in. When the plan was originally created and developed, we didn't know how bad things would get when it came to state and federal funding. And so we'll want to just call voice to reason in a section of this plan so that we're prepared over the next 5 years and setting ourselves up for success. I'll pause real quick before I jump into previewing some of the addendum data, just keeping in mind we are still in the process of collecting all of the data previously mentioned to see if there's any questions or clarifying things.
Yeah, I think we have one in the room.
Kiki, so you said that we're gonna need a lot of emergency housing. What are we doing about that?
That's a great question. And that is exactly why I think this plan is so important and the work that you all are doing. And that we're coming together as a region because we all do have a specific role to play. But I think we're going to need to just continue to take an approach that both increases like the affordable housing, the permanent supportive housing, the emergency housing and shelter, while also doing what we need to do to actually address the root causes so that we're decreasing the issue. The just numbers of it. I see a hand now. Okay, Dorsal.
Wait, really quick
go ahead.
before we go to Dorsal, sorry, Josh.
I just have one follow-up question. So when you say affordable, what's affordable? AMI 30%, AMI 50%, 60, 80?
For the purposes of this report, they're specifically talking about the 30% or lower, equal or
Thank
lower.
you. Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you, Dorsal.
I just wanted to add because the chart that Kiki's showing right now is the housing need numbers. So for those who haven't been following the local comprehensive planning process, these numbers were provided to each of the cities in King County, and they were required to develop plans that accommodate the amount of housing that is listed here by income band. King County took these numbers and broke them out by cities. That's not something necessarily that CoC funding ties in, but it does tie into how our funding can be used locally or not used locally through planning processes. And so just wanted to flag that if that's something in the future we wanted to learn a little bit more about as well too. But that's some of the answer here is the cities had to take these numbers and figure out how to make that housing at least possible in the city.
Thank you. Yeah, and I forgot to mention that the data that we'll be that we're seeing is from that comprehensive plan, and then all of the other data is coming from some Golden Report. The state level data is coming from the Golden Report. So yeah, this slide basically, like I said, comes from the county comprehensive plan. And it shows that in the next 20 years, so by 2044, there will need to be about 81,000, almost 82,000 additional affordable housing units, almost 43,000 permanent supportive housing, and then almost 59,000 emergency housing. And this is just breaking that down over the 5-year period of this plan. This is what that kind of looks like. And it does kind of underscore for us, at least at KCRHA, with our role really being on emergency housing and shelter when we're talking about the whole landscape of housing and homelessness response roles, just really underscores the need to rise to that need. So we need more emergency housing and shelters, but we also need an effective strategy for decreasing unsheltered homelessness. So I just wanted to show this really quick to again underscore that there's lots of different players. There's 3 like kind of main players involved when we're talking about housing and homeless system responses, and we all have to come together over the next 5 years to ensure that we're addressing this need. So I'll pause again because I can't see faces, so I'm not sure if there's any questions, and I'll see if there are real quick.
I have a question, and that is, when they're calculating the need in 2024, are they taking into consideration that a lot of the multifamily tax exempt places are only tax exempt for about 12 years and then they don't have to be affordable after that?
That's a great question that I'll have to follow up with you on. I'm not sure if anyone on this call might know more. Dorsal, you seem to know maybe about some of this data, but I would probably wager that they aren't factoring that in if I had to guess. But I'll follow up with Monica, who's been leading this part of the plan, just to make sure. But I'll pause to see if other folks might have an answer live.
we'd want to talk directly with King County because they did some
Yeah.
amazing work with these numbers. But my understanding is Kiki's assumption is correct, that these numbers are new numbers, and when they were generated, they assumed that not a single unit of emergency shelter or step housing or permanent supportive housing would be lost between now and 2044. And I think for many of us, Elizabeth, yes, the reality of it is that for parts of our South King County in particular, we're already seeing unit loss. But there are real good experts at King County planning that can really dive into these numbers, and it might be something for us to consider just because it is a really fascinating topic.
Yeah, Kate and Martha over at the county have been working with us on some of this stuff, and they're just super, super knowledgeable, and got to give them a shout out on their support for this.
Yeah, Martha, that's Martha Sessos. So one day she's not here.
So I'm going to go ahead and talk now about some of the prioritization criteria. So in the plan, we also have to call out what prioritization criteria is being used across the region for new capital investments for housing and homelessness projects. And so for us, we have some emergency shelter and rapid rehousing contracts, and I have our mission up here, which I think you are all familiar with, so I won't waste more of our time. It's not a waste. You know what? I'm going to read it. Administering effective performance-based homeless services to support a high-functioning homeless crisis response system to significantly decrease the incident of unsheltered homelessness across the county using equity and social justice principles. And with our recent data from the PIT in 2024, our unsheltered count is 7,685, which is a majority, 57.5%. So our mission really remains vital. We're working with the county and the city of Seattle, as well as some local sub-regional partners, to call out the prioritization criteria that are being used for capital investment projects. At KCRHA, we don't do the capital investment projects, so we will just be calling out and integrating the prioritization processes that already exist. So City of Seattle Office of Housing. Sorry, I feel like somebody was going to say something or correct me. I am still new, so please feel free to correct me if there is a point that needs correcting.
Good.
Well, Kiki, am I unmuted? Because 2024 PIT unsheltered homeless count at 7,685. But I thought Ben just said it was 9,810.
This is the unsheltered home. Well, let me double.
Oh, okay, different. There's a difference.
I'll double check though, because I would listen to
Okay.
Ben. Ben's the data expert here, so this might be a point I need to clarify, fix in our slides. So.
Yeah, if you're okay with me interjecting here,
Please.
Kiki.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So let's see. In 2024, that would have been 9810. It does look like this is a typo. That number is the number from 2022.
Perfect. Thank you.
So the number from
down there.
2024, yeah.
Good catch, Eagle Eye.
Good eye. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, y'all are thank you. I appreciate that. So we'll go ahead and actually let's do this right. I'll fix it after this, but thank you.
But it's still vital, that's what you said, so.
Yeah, and there has been a 26, I believe, % increase since 2022. So looking from this number to the number that Ben had shared. So if anything, it's like more vital.
Right.
Right, yeah, so this is the prioritization criteria the City of Seattle Office of Housing is using for capital funding, housing and homelessness priorities. So for permanent supportive housing and extremely low income housing for people exiting homelessness. So projects serving individuals and families who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, especially those who are disproportionately impacted by housing instability. And they call it some specific subpopulations there. So folks who are experiencing chronic homelessness, so experience longer repeating episodes of homelessness, chronic disabilities, criminal records, served in the military, or other significant barriers to housing. They're also prioritizing projects affirmatively further fair housing and advance the city's equitable development goals, including prioritizing investments in areas where residents have experienced or are at risk of displacement, rehabilitate or recapitalize existing affordable housing already in the Office of Housing portfolio, thereby extending their affordability period. So I think this does try to get at some of that tension that was brought up earlier with the data. And then stabilizing distressed properties by providing capital to restructure debt to levels that allow for sustainable cash flow, as well as by modifying existing regulatory agreements. And here is some of the counties. So prioritizing projects for homeless, extremely low income housing, permanent supportive housing. So projects that create or retain housing units for high need households, prioritizing chronic and access to supportive housing. Projects that provide a moving on strategy that assists people who've achieved stability in PSH and seek to maintain housing with fewer supports. Projects serving individuals or families with behavioral health or substance use conditions, and projects that demonstrate racial equity outcomes. Additionally, veteran housing, jail divestment projects to help young folks divert from the legal system, and transit-oriented development. And they're doing that in partnership with Seattle Transit and King County Metro. I thought I heard a voice, so I'll stop real quick. A question?
Elizabeth, did you have a question? I saw your hand pop up.
It's okay. She's answering it.
Never mind. We got it covered. Thank you, Kiki.
Of course. The last thing is I'm going to be I've already started reaching out to some of our other sub-regional partners. So Dorsal, I'm going to be reaching out to you for the other hat you wear with Skip. But thank you for some of the materials you sent over, as well as Arch, just to make sure we are covering like the full region in terms of prioritization criteria. Some key takeaways for us so far at KCRHA, again, decreasing unsheltered homelessness remains vital, especially since that is our role at KCRHA is leading in that. And we need to balance that for that need for affordable housing and permanent supportive housing. So partnering with the cities, with the county, who are the leads for these things is going to be crucial. I'll pause before talking about the state objectives and our plan for the strategies.
Back on the prioritization, you have a Seattle prioritization and King County prioritization. Does this impact just the housing or the individuals? In other words, if an individual is seeking housing and is in Seattle, but finds housing in King County, are they prioritized by Seattle priorities or King County priorities?
Yeah, let me clarify. This is what the city and the county are using to prioritize new capital projects for housing. So it's not for this is like the criteria. Yes, this is the criteria that they would use for that. Go ahead, Dorsal.
So it's for housing development, right?
I think, yeah, I was just gonna say, did you want to add something?
Elizabeth, so annually, Seattle's Office of Housing and also King County's Department of Community and Human Services, they put out funding announcements. And these are the priorities for those particular funding announcements. Now, eventually that results in a real building, right? But at that point in time, the funding announcement's not as, they've already laid out how the building will operate, things along those lines. If the funding announcement is not dictating like the actual person by person filling of the unit, other than having set those priorities in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Steph. I'm gonna, thank you. Add those notes into my note section.
Dorsal, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I noticed that these are the city and county capital prioritizations. Are you also looking at the operational priorities for the 5-year plan, or are you only looking at the capital side, or I'm also wondering kind of the operational priorities as well? If that actually, I'll be honest, I don't know much about operational funding short of what I've accessed.
Really, to be transparent, this is something that we is required by like the state guidelines to go back and add this into our plan. I think we could add the operational priorities. We could use this as an opportunity to do that, and I am open to. I think that could be a really great idea. I think the purpose why they wanted these things specifically why the state wants these in the plans is so that we are using these kinds of like both the estimates, some of the data that we started looking for to help kind of guide how we're setting up prioritization criteria for the 5-year period. So I know that doesn't totally answer your question, but I think that is a good idea to look into. I do see this 5-year plan as an event, like we're already doing some extra stuff besides the requirements, because I think it's a good opportunity to just course steer us in the direction we want to go. So yeah.
Great. Thank you. Is there any other questions in the room or online for Kiki? Okay. You still have some more to go, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
can I get a time check? Because I can't see the clock. So
You got about 15 minutes left. You got, 13 minutes left technically.
great. That's perfect. All right. So I do just want to share what the state objectives are. Their requirement is for us to also kind of align our strategies to these objectives. We had more than 80 strategies in our original plan, but there were no like overarching kind of objectives that kind of grouped or themed those things up. And so a lot of this section was really just going back through those 80 strategies and mapping them and seeing if there were any additional objectives beyond what was required by the state that we had identified through our planning process in 2022 and 2023. So the 5 that are required by the state are promoting an equitable, accountable, and transparent homeless crisis response system, strengthening the homeless provider workforce, prioritizing those with the greatest barriers to housing stability and the greatest risk of harm, preventing episodes of homelessness whenever possible, seeking to house everyone in a stable setting that meets their needs. And then we did identify one additional goal around strengthening delivery and coordination across the sub-regions. So we had a whole host of strategies related to sub-regional coordination as well as severe weather coordination across the sub-regions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through each of these and I'll show the big buckets of the strategies that have been identified. We won't have time to go through all 80 of the strategies, but please note that those I believe have already been emailed out to you where we're at right now with where those things are mapped. In that table that is still in a draft format, I think the things that are in red are things that are being identified as a status update, and so will be pulled out or will have some additional narrative associated with them in the addendum. But I just wanted to make sure you all could see early on like how we're starting to map these things out. And just note that all of those items can be found in the original plan. I believe I included all the wonky little letters and stuff, so you could easily just go back to the original plan and be like, boom, this is where that strategy showed up. So just kind of a little note before we go into this section, and warm up that there will be future engagement opportunities. This won't be the first time to go through this very detailed information. I'll pause.
Kiki? Just really quickly, Kristina, one of our board members, just asked which department developed the state objectives on the slide.
I don't know what department at the Department of Commerce. I don't know what their planning process looked like to develop this. But what I will do is I'll make available to Catherine and Kelsey the state guidelines, the full packet where they call out all of these things, so you all can read it yourselves. And they, as well as the state's plan itself. So it calls out each of these things in their own plan as well.
I think Jeff had something to add to that.
Yeah, I can just, on the question of what went into the state development of their plan, they do have a long process that was completed more than a year ago to do this. It included even like publicly posting the expected final plan, KCRHA. I can't remember, I think that we actually talked about it at the time and got endorsement from our boards. I can't recall for certain, but actually submitted a letter noting our support generally for the plan. Of course, at the time, we understood that our already approved 5-year plan was going to get grandfathered in as acceptable. Yeah. And so we did not anticipate that there was going to be any further work for us to have to update things. It's a little bit of a change. And I think that there is a lot of places where the substance and the goals of our existing 5-year plan align with the state one. And it's more a matter of doing the crosswalking that Kiki's talking about. You know, like goal number 67 means this for you. And Commerce is requiring that we do that now. Whereas before we thought that they were either going to do that work for us and then offer it back or not make us do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, I just wanted to remind people to introduce yourself when you're asking questions just ahead of time, and so we know, so the captioner can accurately capture who's here. And
I didn't do that. My name is Jeff Sims. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Senior Director for Policy at KCRHA.
Thank you. Yeah, we had all the right ingredients. We just had to reformat it into a different. So instead of a spaghetti, we're having a lasagna now, I think. But it's still basically there. So these are sorry, other questions.
No, I was just saying you made me hungry after saying
that. I know. I had lasagna for dinner last night, so you can see where I'm at. So these are the big focus areas of the strategies I had identified in 2023 through that process that relate to Commerce's first goal, the state's first goal. So we have some strategies around building equitable processes for designing and funding culturally responsive services, using data to advance best practices for serving disproportionately impacted communities by partnering with by-for organizations, strengthening system accountability to individuals with lived experience, and improving KCRHA Ombuds office access and feedback integration. The second one around strengthening homeless service provider workforce. This was an area where we were invited to think of some additional ones. And so I'd be very curious to hear from the CoC folks, like what types of strategies should be prioritized or that y'all are would like prioritize right at some point. But the two big buckets, I would say, are around improving the wages for homeless service providers and increasing technical assistance, training, and professional development support so that providers and homeless service workers are not being set up to fail once they do take a job, or that there's a lot of kind of vertical progression in their career. Yeah. Preventing episodes of homelessness. So this is their third objective. For us, we had two major kind of buckets around improving diversion programming so that it could support more prevention cases, and increasing connection and collaboration with other systems and institutions to streamline prevention efforts. So, you know, that has to do with improving referral processes and making sure that like schools are connected, like there's a referral process that way, that sort of thing. Prioritizing assistance based on the greatest barrier to housing stability and the greatest risk of harm. So the two big buckets were around developing and implementing a global by name list that captures each population type across the region, and identifying and implementing improvements to update and refresh the coordinated entry system. Shout out Tom and Jeff and everyone on that team, because there's already been like progress, I think. And Ben's here too, the data team. This is another area where there's going to be some cool status updates, I think, to share in the plan. Seeking to house everyone in a stable setting that meets their needs. So the two big buckets are around increasing and enhancing programming for subpopulations and disproportionately impacted communities, and improving coordination and referral with other systems intersecting with the homeless response system. And then strengthening service delivery and coordination across subregions. So this wasn't required, but we had a whole bunch of strategies related to it. So the buckets are around strengthening subregional partnerships to improve resources and access across communities, expanding and standardizing severe weather coordination, and improving access to and integration of region-wide data. I'll pause, and I know there might be some more questions, so I'll pause now before we have a couple more slides, and then it's just open Q&A, but see if there's any clarifying points at this point.
Yeah, I don't see any. Oh, Elizabeth, we've got 4 minutes left on this agenda.
Okay.
But if you want to wait till
I'll wait.
okay, keep going.
So real quick, just to note, we're in the middle of doing some targeted addendum development engagement and doing some additional engagement just as we're like drafting this out. I do want to call attention that there will be a public survey available to folks, including all of y'all, that includes the details of the strategies and all that stuff, so folks can provide some more in-depth kind of feedback that way, hoping to launch that in August. And we will be having a public hearing and public comment period in the fall, so be on the lookout to share that in your networks. There will be a public notice on our website, on our socials, and in a local newspaper as required by the state. But there will be lots of that would be would love to get support in sharing that widely across the region to make sure we are making sure everybody gets a chance to add their thoughts and comments. So after the plan is adopted, my team will be implementation planning. So thinking about how to continue implementing these things specifically in the subregions, tracking some of these, our progress on these things, and providing status updates. So that's all I got. Thank you for giving me time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see people's faces now.
Elizabeth, did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. I have noted that on the standardizing of emergency shelter across the area, is there any incentive given to the cities to have a common standard? Because it's not working in my area.
Yeah, also that was specifically about severe weather coordination and whatnot. So slightly different than like emergency housing. I guess the incentive, like in some of, like on East King County, for example, what they're considering doing like we're in the process of looking at a severe weather kind of ILA, so that KCRHA could like coordinate those severe weather contracts and things like that to kind of streamline it. I think different communities, parts of the community will have different opinions on whether there's an incentive or not in doing that. From our perspective, or at least the plan's perspective, it really calls out a need to make sure there is service coverage across the county and to streamline that. And I think the way that it was written, it was before, correct me if I'm wrong, my KCRHA kind of folks and alum, like there wasn't like a central kind of like person or process doing the survey, or there was like multiple people kind of coordinating that. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I think part of it was just in ensuring that, but I'm not sure if that's fully answering your question, but so I'll stop and see if other folks have other responses or if you could guide me a little more.
Jeff has a response.
I can clarify a little bit more about the way severe weather has historically often operated. Again, my name is Jeff Sims, he, him pronouns, Senior Director of Policy at KCRHA. Do I do that each time?
Well, just your name. That sounded great. You did a great job.
So there's a lot of severe weather shelters, especially, for example, that faith-based institutions will open up when it's severe weather that we don't provide any funding to. And so there's not a mechanism to control when those shelters might open up for a severe weather event. So right now, for example, KCRHA is in a tier 2 activation. It's set by the National Weather Service. We're at this stage that equals these kind of actions. And anyone that gets funding from us is triggered in those same ways and has the same requirements. But if there is a shelter somewhere that is operating on its own, they get to determine what they want to do. And so one goal was to increase the standardization of that. Also, even to the degree that there may be like a city-funded entity out there, they might have, slightly different standards or thresholds, that it's 85 degrees instead of 90 degrees or things like that. And that becomes really confusing. And RHA has usually spent a lot of time with the goal of trying to make sure everyone's aware of severe weather options, to not only say, hey, ours is activated, but call every person we could to find out every option that's available, to make sure that resources are getting utilized and being publicized so people know what options they have.
Yes, it has been confusing because
Yeah.
I know it's tier 2 and I tell people that, but it hasn't reached the threshold in my area.
Just a reminder, there's going to be a public comment period where I did hear that we were all going to be able to make these comments for the 5-year plan from Kiki there, correct? I heard there was a public comment period.
Yeah. Sorry, were you going to say something
No,
else?
you're good. If you wanted to say one last thing, we're going to be wrapping up and moving into the next agenda item.
Just that if there was like a desire to have a more like focus group kind of discussion versus presentation, I'm available for that. I don't want you all to have to like wait for the public comment period to let me know what you're thinking. So just know that we're here hoping to have a close to final draft by the end of August, if not sooner, just so we can put some of those final like touches on it. So that's what I got. I just appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you so much, Kiki. We appreciate you coming in and giving us those updates. Sounds like the crosswalk's gonna be fun to really look at. So now we're gonna move into the vote portion of today for the CoC letter, which looks like there might be some like language that we have to update just slightly for the legal side, if that's correct. So we'll take a look at that and, but should we just read the letter as it is, or how would you like us to proceed on that, like with the portion that you put in there?
Do you mind if I ask, is the plan to have individuals sign, or are you trying to do it as a board?
So that's what we're kind of here talking about today. We're glad you're here to help us on that question. I think the idea would be, if those want to be signed on as individuals, I think that that's important for, our own values and how we are wanting to be represented. As a board, it could be just collectively everybody, and maybe not everybody wants to. So that's kind of my thought.
So are you saying that?
You state.
Oh, my name is Jaja Floyd. And what I want to say for clarity is, if as a board, then can it just have the co-chair signature? I mean, I want my name on it. I want them to know. But I'm just saying, you know, that's my question.
Yeah,
How
so,
does that work?
just for the transcript, this is Evan Witter, General Counsel. Do you want to do a quick, like, 10-minute executive session?
Yeah, I'm gonna call the board into an executive session for the remaining 10 minutes or the next 10 minutes. On what's the RCW?
RCW 42.30.110, subsection I.
So do I need to say that? Okay. So that is gonna be RCW.
I will get a set
It's
up.
that one meeting.
So I
Or
will
just the
42.
curiosity.
Dot 30.
Dot 30.110.
10, subsection
No, no,
I.
no.
Subsection I.
It's that one meeting.
And that is,
Subsection I.
subsection I is to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency matters relating to an agency enforcement actions, or to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency. Okay,
Thanks, Ruby.
thanks. Okay,
Bye, Tom.
And in subsection 3,
so do we have to go into another room now?
are we?
Kelsey said she was getting set up.
Yeah, I think Kelsey is.
Dorso's hand is up, Ruby.
Oh, Dorsal, your hand. We're still in a public meeting, right? So,
And right now, I think action is paused until we're transitioning. I do want to flag actually procedurally, if we're doing a 10-minute executive session, that means we would not have time to return to regular session to adjourn the meeting on time.
do we have a motion to extend the meeting?
I
By
move
5
that we
minutes?
extend the meeting.
By 5 minutes, is that?
And this
okay?
is Kristina, I second it.
Oh,
I-
wait.
Point of information, it's a public meeting. I would want to check that we can extend the meeting since it would be going past the publicly posted time.
I'm getting a nod from the council.
Yeah, we
Can
started.
we do the motion again?
Okay,
Can we do the motion again, chief?
so, do,
I move that we extend the meeting.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm
And I'll
Elizabeth.
second.
And
that
who
was
are you, Kristina?
That was a second by Kristina and a motion made by Elizabeth to extend the meeting by 5 minutes, so we can come back and address the public after the executive session. And the second was Kristina. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, not hearing any. We are extending our meeting by 5 minutes. And now everyone could see the link there in the chat to join a Teams meeting. Please join that link and exit this one.
All of us?
If you, yeah, the board, please.
Okay.
And we go on mute.
This is
on our-
Kristina. I'm gonna have to come off of this
Yeah.
and log into the other, okay? I can't hear any.
Patricia, we are in
So,
the Zoom
Ben, we
meeting,
can hear you.
so you need to follow the Teams link for the executive session. We'll be in executive session for 4 more minutes until 4 o'clock, so please
It
join.
was not working when I tried to do it. It did not work. It just kicked me off.
Please try again and we can get you in.
Okay, so apparently the link is not in this chat. Maybe it's on a different one. Because it logged me off and I had to log back in. So
Yeah. Okay, so the executive session is gonna be going for another 10 minutes. Just we had some technical difficulties. So
Till 4:10.
till 4:10. Thank you. Patricia, if you don't mind checking your email, the link would be there. We're waiting for you. Okay, so we are
In the
back.
Zoom meeting, we will.
We're gonna be waiting for the rest of the board to show up to come back and do the adjournment. So we'll give them just a second to come back. What was that?
Elizabeth. Elizabeth.
Can you mute us? We're way over time. Do we have time to do this or? Yeah, okay, so. Is there a motion to extend?
We don't have everybody back.
Okay. Do we need to extend it,
Yeah.
council?
Yeah, if you want to make I mean, this is more of a Robert's rules issue. but
Yeah,
if
so
you
we're
want to
just-
make a motion to extend you mean in terms of just the meeting?
Yeah, because I just don't want to get like up for me. Right?
No, that's not an issue.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Point of information though, the advice. The letter is not in a place where we can make a motion at this point because it's halfway between two letters. There are references to the Washington 500 that I attempted to highlight in that very rushed, disorganized session that are later in the letter that we would need to modify. But we would only need to modify them if we're taking the rapid advice that we were just given. And so I just want to flag that this isn't something we can immediately just take a vote on. We still have to do a little bit of draft.
Yeah, you're right. And also I did hear that we don't have to actually vote on a full signature, right? So, or on a full board signature. So.
Well, if you're just gonna do the letter so that everyone's signing it, essentially just presenting the letter for people to sign if they want to.
Yeah, so we would just present it at a later time and then post it with our meeting minutes or something like that.
Yeah, you could offer it just for individuals to take a look at the letter and they can review it on their time, decide whether they want to sign it.
Yeah, okay. So then should we adjourn?
Can I just, can I ask for like a 5-minute extension on this meeting? And I want to ask this question about the letter. Is it going to be, can it be emailed individually to people? And then if they, like I do this all the time on action, fast action, right? Where they send you the letter and you just fill in your information and send it off.
So,
Is that what you're
yeah,
saying or no?
well, so like under the Open Public Meetings Act, like you all can't work together on a
Yeah.
letter.
On the email,
Well, like if just someone's just gonna forward an email or it's just gonna be posted, that's fine, but you just can't have a discussion or
Yeah,
take.
no,
this-
We're
no
not editing the
discussion.
document. It's either gonna be for signature or no signature.
That's what I meant,
Yeah.
that's what I meant.
Yeah.
The finished document sent out and
And because we're not voting to do something as a board, individuals can sign whatever they want to sign.
then,
Yeah,
that's.
is that correct?
Yeah, if people wanna sign a letter, that's up to them.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
So we thought we were gonna have a read through of the letter. We're not gonna do that today, after the discussion that we had. So, I encourage those who are interested in reading over the letter. We can have that discussion later. We will send it out again after the edits have been made. And thank you all for your time today. It's 4:15. We are way over time. Dorsal, I threw your hand for any last comments.
Sorry, it's a point of information. I don't think there's clear direction and what are we doing? So at this point, are we drafting a letter that is a template that we will send out to individuals that individuals can choose whether to send or not send? Or are we taking an action as a board?
I'm sorry if I wasn't clarifying that. So it sounds like to me, the decision was that we were not going to be taking action as a board, and if individuals wanted to sign on at a later time because of personal autonomy and decisions on their own life, yes, Dorsal.
Point of order. I think that a decision would require a motion and a vote. I don't know if we've decided to not take action as a board.
Okay, that is a great question. So, do I hear a motion to make?
Amy has her hand.
Oh, Amy, so sorry, I did not see your hand pop.
No,
There?
my apologies. Do we have a lawyer?
She's right
Anyone?
here.
You're the
She's
one?
right there.
Okay.
Well, Edmund has been, we personally do not have a lawyer. The COC does not personally have a lawyer, but we have a waiver to ask for legal advice.
Well, yeah, I'm serving as your lawyer in this.
He
Oh, you
is-
are?
Yes,
Okay,
he
okay.
said that. Yeah.
I don't know the technicalities, man. All right. Dorsal,
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 4:16 PM.
okay,
I second that motion, Dorsal. My name is Jaja Floyd. I completely say that.
So there's no decision on this?
well, the meeting is, I don't, I thought, Dorsal, I thought you would ask if we were gonna make a decision as a board.
I'm at this point, I'm asking to adjourn the meeting because I don't
Okay.
feel like we have any clear direction or understanding. I raised a concern in the executive session that has not been addressed. I'm happy if the board wants to make a motion to vote differently, although at this time, the motion is on the floor to adjourn the meeting.
Any opposition to adjourning the meeting? Not hearing any? Please send your comments, the emails if you have any questions, and we'll give an update to the board on what we're doing next. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.